Hi everyone, this is Susanne from Susie's Craftery, and today I will show you my monthly setup for the month of February in my bullet journal. And today I will be using the Collected Moments paper pad, and I will use the sheet numbers 5 and 8. And right now I'm cutting a detail out of sheet number 8. So it fits in my journal page, and I'll also cut out these beautiful little keys. I really instantly fell in love with the colors of these images. I really think the orange and the purple and also the green of that artichoke flower, I think it looks really nice. And since I cut out the larger image, the edges are now really sharp and I don't really like it on this page that I will be making. So I use a paper distresser to give the edges a bit more of a distressed look. And I also really love the other side of the sheet number 8. This is the back side of where that image is from. And I'm measuring it up in my journal so I can use the right size for it. And I'm cutting down the right size. And I always like to rip also part of the paper so you get that nice white edge. And I really like to use also Distress Oxide for making backgrounds in my bullet journal, and this is the color Rusty Hinge. And I'm just swiping it over the paper to create a nice colored background. And as you can see, I do it quite messy. I really like a bit that distressed messy look. And when I edit that layer, I dry it with the heat tool, because I want to add also another layer with another color, and this is the color Pumice Stone. I always like to layer my colors so you get a bit more of a playful look. And to close it off, I'm using a little bit of walnut stain. I do it really lightly. So you get that really nice layering but not too much of that dark color. And now I'm using metallic wax. I really like to bring some details. You see there are still some white parts and you also see a bit of that stripiness from how I swipe the ink pads. And I really like to bring out some white gold details. And I'm doing it with a flat brush. I found out that you then get the best strokes. And I'm just applying it quite randomly. I just check the page and I do it a bit here and there, a bit like what my feeling tells me. And in this I also like to create some depth in the colors, so I'm using like 3 colors. I'm using white gold, vintage gold, and I will be closing off with aged brass. And in this way, with that multiple colors, you get a bit like depth in that metallic part also. And I also like to add the metallic wax on the white edge where I ripped the paper. I think it really gives a nice playful look like this. And I think it also really, in color-wise, matches the page. And I only apply it on really like the white edge. So I don't touch it on the colored part. I only apply it to that white part. And in that way I think it looks most beautiful. But you can do it as you like, of course. This is just my way. And since my bullet journal has a bit like rounded corners, I'm using a corner punch to make the corners round. And then it's time to glue this part to the page. And I think it already looks really nice. And I decided to cut out the inner part of the key. I liked if you can see the background through that hole of the key, so that's why I cut out the inner part. And when I added that photo on the right page, I thought, oh yeah, it's also nice to add there some of that background paper, which I also used on the left side. When I make my spreads in my journal, I always look for balance in the left and the right page, so it becomes like a whole. So that's why I like to use what's on the left side also on the right side, so it looks like a complete image instead of two separate pages. But since I cut in that paper already, I have a bit too less to make one big stroke, so I cut out some little parts and I will place it over each other, and then I will add the photo over it, and I hope you don't see the little line where it's cut then anymore. And as you can see, you don't see it really much where the papers are layering. And I thought it's maybe also nice to add this key to the page, so I will also cut it out. But in the end I decided I just like only the orange key, so I will put the other key away. And of course I also need to add the name of February to the page, and I decided to use a tag for it. I cut it out with my embossing cutter, and I like to make a little bit of stamp to it, and I use this stamp from Stampers Anonymous. And I make really light impression with the stamps to give it a bit of a messy look. And also the edges I apply some Distress Oxide. This is the color Walnut Stain. I also stamped in Walnut Stain. And in that way you get a bit more of a vintage look, I think. And I wanted to pull the ribbon, the paper ribbon of course, through the hole of the tag, but it was too large. So I decided to cut it in two, and like this it also looks like the ribbon is just pulled through the hole. I think it looks really nice like this, a bit like playful. And you see me now ripping off the paper again, because I thought the right page is too wide. I also wanted to make it like the same as the left page, so I decided again to start off with some Distress Oxide in the color Rusty Hinge. And then I add of course a bit of pumice stone, like I also did on the left page. And I will close it off with a little bit of Walnut Stain. And of course also on this part I add some metallic wax details. Also in that three colors that I used before, to give it a bit of depth. And I play it off a little bit faster because you've seen it already how I did it on the left page. And like this it looks more like a hole, I think. Now left and right is really matching together. And now it's time to add the name February, and I do it in hand lettering. And I also really like this chipboard ephemera. There were like little butterflies and little bees, and I thought it was really matching nice with the page. And this is a stamped image that I made before, and I thought that's also nice. I have a butterfly on the left side, so I also wanted a butterfly on the right side. And this is my February cover spread in my bullet journal. And next up I want to make a reflections page. I always like to reflect on my goals and my dreams, and yeah, on the month before. And in that Collected Moments paper pad I also saw this sheet with the more smaller images, and I really thought this was nice, the image with the word happiness. And I had some leftover of that sheet number 8, so I also like to use it so it becomes also a bit like a whole with the last page with the cover spread. So the same things come a bit back, then it becomes more of a theme. In my monthly setups I always like to work in themes, so I like to use a bit like of the same colors or a bit like similar images. And I think that's really nice. And you see with swiping over with the paper pad on the paper, I can't reach the right edge where the paper is bended in the book. So I use a little blending tool to also give color to that part. And I also of course add the colors pumice stone and walnut stain like I also did in the spread before. And I also close it off with some metallic wax like I also did in the spread before. And I'll be using that 3 colors again to give it more of a depth. And on the right page I'm going to write my reflections of course, so I leave a large part of it white. But I also like to give it a little bit of color, so I make a little edge with the rusty hinge and with the walnut stain. And I also really like to give the ripped up edge of the paper a little color. Sometimes I use distress for it, but in this case I use the metallic wax. And now you see me using the distress to color the edges. I always like to give the edges of ripped papers or embellishments a little bit of color, so it gives a bit more contrast with the rest of the page, so it stands out a bit more. And I'll also color the edge of the happiness card a bit with distress. And maybe you can also see the difference, like before I didn't do it and now I'm doing it, and that you can see it really gives a bit more of contrast and a bit more playfulness. And it looks a bit more vintage like this, I think. I really like to create also that vintage look. And as you remember, I cut out this key before and I didn't want to use it on my cover spread, but I thought in this spread it looks really nice. And I didn't want to cut off that ribbon, so I decided to let it peek out of my journal a little bit, and I can fold it inside when I close my journal, so it won't stick out constantly. But I think it gives some really playfulness. And I add a little bee from my chipboard ephemera. And I close off the page with some stickers that I had laying around. And I decided to stamp the word reflection with these stamps on the page. And to do that, I first measure out how much space I need. So I lay the amount of letters in that little packs on my page. And then after I will stamp it. And then like this you can measure it up a bit if you layer it out like this. I used a Dutch word for reflection. It's just almost the same as in English. But since I'm Dutch, I like to use the Dutch words. And I finish off the page with some extra stamps. I also always love stamping on my pages. And you can use any stamp you like, of course. You don't have to necessarily use these ones. I had these ones laying around, so I thought it's nice. It gives some extra playfulness to the page, I think. And this is my setup for the month of February in my bullet journal. This is my cover spread of February with the key, which came a bit loose, but I really like it. And the reflections page where I can reflect on the month of January. I want to thank you for watching. I hope you liked this tutorial and hopefully I see you next time. Bye bye!